What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 372 of Opinions May Vary. I am your host, Jayare. I have my co-host with me, Alex.
Hey.
How are you?
Pretty good.
How are you? You know what the season is? It's allergy season. Do you know why I'm miserable? Because it's allergy season.
It's that time.
I think I went through about 8 boxes of tissues today, and it was awful. That's my fun story. That's my recap for the week. Joining us this week is Ellie Hillis. Ellie, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hey.
This is going to be a lot of fun, mostly because I'm going to give the both of you an opportunity to make fun of me. We're going to get schooled in comic knowledge. It's going to be great. Now, this all happened because of something that... This is why everyone's going to make fun of me. Because of something that happened a couple weeks ago up in Northampton at The Deuce, the World War II Club. Is the actual official name, right?
Yeah.
They call it the Deuce because two Deuce. Yeah,
you did it.
2 of them. They do a monthly thing called Nerd Nite. Monthly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I got introduced to this a couple last year. I can't remember. Joe did one. It's where people can go and they can give talks on topics or subjects that they might be passionate about. They might, for example, Brett. Brett came on a couple months ago and talked about Mothman for a long time. And Brett, last month, 2 months ago?
2 months ago.
I gotta get my facts. Did a talk on Mothman because that's something that Brett knows a lot about, and he figured, hey, maybe other people would be more interested to hear about this too.
If you ever hated setting up your PowerPoint in high school or any school and do it on this history book, and now as an adult, someone says, hey, do another PowerPoint, but on something you're really into. Yep. And now it's fun.
Now it's a fun PowerPoint.
I mean, I do PowerPoints as part of my job, and even those I really like. So I think I'm just a big dork. It's
neat to put them. You got to do the clip art, and you make them spin when they come out on the screen.
You animate it so it like wiggles a little bit.
This was like my first one. Ever.
Ellie gets it. I've been to a couple of these. I saw Joe speak. Joe did a presentation on heist movies. So it can be like kind of about anything, if you're passionate about it, if you can speak well about it, if there's substance there.
You just got to make a good pitch to Ibro.
Yep. And Alex gave one 3 weeks ago, last month. And I've slept through it. I missed it. I was a piece of shit. I was a bad friend.
I don't care because JR was here for our one-on-one episode when I talked about it Thanksgiving. I think it was two or 3 years ago.
2 years ago, I believe, because Alex talked about the process of donating a kidney to someone who may be in need, which is something that he talked about in length on an episode as well, and kind of a deviation from our normal thing a couple years ago. It was a really cool episode. Go back and listen to it. And unfortunately, I slept through it, so I didn't get to see the Alex's presentation, or because they do 2 of them every night, or every time rather. And the second presentation was by Ellie, and that was on Ellie. What? Because I'm going to butcher it. What did you speak about at Nerd Nite?
So Captain Marvel had just come out like the week before, so I talked about Captain Marvel, but like from the comic side of things. So I talked about kind of Carol Danvers' history, the history of Captain Marvel being a title for like multiple female characters and how that's pretty cool. And then like the legacy of Ms. Marvel with Kamala Khan now. So it was sort of a mix of everything, but I got to talk about sort of the weird and wacky history of Carol Danvers, which like with all female characters in comics is real weird. So that was kind of the gist of it. I was like, well, did you know that her cat in the comics is named Chewie after Chewbacca?
I did not, honestly.
Yeah, there you go.
That's why they didn't name it Chewie in the movie.
Yeah, Goose is a great name for a cat of an air pilot, but like Chewie is such a good name, and I'm a little disappointed that Disney wasn't like, oh yeah, go ahead.
Because they own it all.
Yeah.
Anyways, why not just...
What are they? I think people get confused.
I'm so disappointed now.
What are they going to do? Sue themselves?
Right? Can one department sue the other department? I don't know how that works.
Probably.
And I was psyched for this because I own maybe 18 total issues of Ms. Marvel, Captain Marvel, and I have some of her older appearances when she has the powers. I have her like the imposter version.
Yep.
When Karen Sofin took over, which Ellie touched on during the presentation, which I was psyched for because I'm a huge fan of the Thunderbolts, and that's Moonstone. And so Moonstone for so long couldn't be Moonstone because that was her villain name, and she had to start off trying to be a hero because that was Baron Zemo's ploy. So she was Meteorite, and then Norman Osborn takes over the Thunderbolts, and he's like, "Now you're Captain Marvel, you're Ms. Marvel," and she's like, "I just want to be Moonstone." He's like, "Shut up, do what I say," and it's like this hurts her, and so like there's a bunch of issues for that. And what they were doing that was kind of neat. Like every other issue of Ms. Marvel for a while was following Carol Danvers. The next one would be Karen Sofin as Moonstone. And like they'd have their big finale and the issues would like restart as just Carol Danvers eventually.
Yeah.
So that was neat. And like I was psyched for a lot of it. Ellie touched on Monica being in the movie, which I was gritting my teeth when they mentioned Rambeau, but they call her as Rambo. And I was like, well, it's the 90s and it's the movies. She's just Rambo. But then at one point in the movie, they pronounced it and they elongated it to Rambeau. And I was like,
yeah.
And they didn't say the daughter's name for a good 10 to 15 minutes. And I was like sweating.
See, I ruined it for myself. I just notoriously don't care about spoilers because I read a study somewhere that says spoilers enhance your experience of watching something. I don't know if that's BS. But anyway, I get like EW every week, and they had something about Monica, and I was like, oh, I'm so hyped for this.
There was something that happened during your presentation, Ellie, that was kind of like the genesis of, hey, we need to talk to her. I'm gonna let Alex tell a story because I only heard it secondhand. Yeah. But let's what exactly went down?
She touched on a really, I'm not gonna have the right words for it. If I say, oh, it's wacky, it's like, no, this is more like problematic, and it's a thing, like it's from a dude point of view, it's not gonna really get across because I'm just some dumb guy. Which is why we ask Ellie on to talk about stuff like this, and she has a lot more examples. But like, she brought it up. I'm gonna let her, actually give the story. But I was like, I bet there's been a lot of these, and we should address these, because as much as we love comics, we like reading Superman beat the bad guy. We like watching Batman Detective Something and Wolverine being really cool and saying Bub Snicked Bub.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of times where, other things happen to characters and we should be like, no, that's not right. That's really weird. Maybe this shouldn't happen. And so comics can be problematic. They can be crazy. Writers can do things out of spite, or they don't understand diversity. And it gets really weird sometimes. So as much as we love them, we still want to see them improve. So that's why I figured today we'll talk about some of the things that shouldn't happen anymore. and put out some examples of like, this is crazy, but that's what comics are. So it's because comics. And like one of my favorite examples is, so Jason Todd is alive because Superboy punched reality. he what? Well, Superboy, he Super Prime, not the other one. There's a lot of them, but he punched
like 20 Superboys.
he wound up and he punched reality real hard and it broke, and now Jason Todd's alive.
Also, he punched Dan Didio during that, right?
I think so. He was like in the wall somewhere. Most likely.
Like he goes to the DC editorial room and is like, "Darn it, Didio, I hate you, kapow!" And that's very satisfying in retrospect, but also just a wild thing to have included in your comic.
Yeah.
And was that before the New 52?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, way before, too. Yeah, that's the weirdest thing. It was like in the 90s.
This was... God, what one was it? It was Infinite Crisis? Yeah.
Yeah, it was some Crisis. I don't know.
Because the big one was Crisis on Infinite Earths. which was like the classic.
That was
one.
back in the 80s.
Yeah,
70s,
that
80s?
It's 80s. That was the
80s, I
classic.
think, with George Perez and all that. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then like more recently was the Infinite Crisis, and then we're not going to talk about Final Crisis, but
And now there's Heroes in Crisis, which gets a little.
Yes.
It's going.
More crises.
It's going deep. This is like an existential crisis. It's not. It's like the emotional toll of all the crises
Mm-hmm.
on super. It's heavy. It's anyways crises.
Yeah, but I really dug. Ellie was talking about some Ms. Marvel, some Carol Danvers stuff, and she got to Immortus, and I was like, he's 3 people. This is gonna be great. We're gonna hit a lot of spoilers today. So if anyone, hasn't read their comics from the past 30 years, you might be in for a few surprises, but
we'll
big
try
load to get through.
we'll try to call out any if something's within the last like 5 years or so. I think would be fair. Maybe some spoilers here. Ultimately, there's going to be a lot of comic book spoilers. So if we start talking about something that maybe you've been meaning to read or see or something, maybe give it a pause. And revisit.
There's an Avengers bad guy. He's Kang the Conqueror. He time travels.
Yep.
He's also this dude named Immortus, who isn't as terrible a person, but he's also kind of bad sometimes. But he also isn't sure. And if you've ever read Young Avengers, there's a character called Iron Lad in that. Iron Lad is also Kang and Immortus. But he's a kid in
I
Tony
feel like
Stark
you're just
armor.
making this up to confuse me. You're just.
But so I feel like Iron Lad is also like a future past version of King and Immortus.
Yeah.
So like he's young, but maybe he's older than they are. It's very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, the thing that got us here was Ellie. I believe the way it was told to me, Ellie dropped the line because comics, which we've dropped ourselves. So immediately,
I think everyone who's read a comic and is
Right?
like, well, that's because comics.
It's the best way to explain the nonsense of it sometimes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're here today to talk about some examples of because comics. I already know that Ellie and Alex are going to put down a history lesson on me today, because I still claim to be new to comics. I have been reading comics for about 10 years now, but I still am. A lot of my stuff is very recent. I haven't read a lot of older stuff, which going through and looking for examples of this, like some of it seems to be before my time, but there also seems to be a lot of stuff that nowadays it's like, okay, maybe let's try to get away from that. But yeah, we're going to talk about comics because comics and things that happen in comics that are just the only way to explain it is because comics.
Yeah.
Because if you try to explain it anymore, you're just going to get real upset.
It gets worse.
So where do we start?
Ellie, can you bring us up with Carol and Immortus, please?
Yeah. So in 1980, David Michelin was the writer and Jim Shooter was the editor-in-chief. They were putting together like the big number 200 issue of the Avengers. And they wanted to build up this big story, and it was decided early on that Ms. Marvel, Carol Danvers, member of the Avengers, would become pregnant. And so in Avengers 200, she became like magically 8 months pregnant, gave birth to a baby in 3 days, and then the baby began to rapidly age. It is super wild because throughout the issue, she's like, oh, Wasp is telling her how lucky she is to have a baby and how happy she is for Carol. And Carol's like, no, I don't want this baby. I don't know who the father is. Like, this is not something I want to experience. So it turns out that she was impregnated by Marcus, who is the son of Immortus, who she encountered in like a timeless interdimensional rift.
Of course.
Yeah, because that's how things work. And in order to escape, Marcus impregnates Miss Marvel with himself. Like, he somehow is able to abduct romance and manipulate her, and then just like be in her womb.
I think the term was like project his essence into her or something
Ugh.
like
Yeah,
that.
no, it's real uncomfortable. So she gets back from the time rift, and gives birth to the baby, and the baby starts rapidly aging, and then the baby, oh golly gee, it's Marcus. And he's like, oh, now I have to go back into space. And Ms. Marvel's like, well, oh Marcus, I love you, let me come with you. And it's supposed to be, I think, very emotional and like teary-eyed, and she's saying how she still has feelings for him, even though he used like a brainwashing machine on her. So she leaves with him, and the Avengers don't like stop her or anything. So literally a year later, Chris Claremont, who wrote the X-Men, was kind of the pinnacle of comic writers back in the 80s, and wrote really awesome, diverse, strong, complicated female characters. He wrote the Avengers Annual number 10, and Ms. Marvel in this issue is transported back to Earth after Marcus dies because he continued to age at an accelerated rate when she left with him. And then he has Professor Xavier help her regain control of her mind and her memories, and she basically confronts the Avengers and is like, you let me get raped and like taken away by this really bad dude. What is wrong with you? And so the series of comics, starting with 200 and ending with the annual number 10, caused this like big wave among feminist comic scholars, which there are a lot more than you would think in the 1980s. There are plenty today, but Carol A. Strickland wrote a super influential essay called The Rape of Miss Marvel that was talking about how comics essentially would use and objectify female characters without thinking about the repercussions, because that was the only thing they could think of to do with the characters. But it's really wild because in the beginning of the 200 issue, she's like, I don't want this baby. I don't want anything to do with this. I don't remember anything about this. Why is this happening to me? And at the end of the 200 issue, she's like, oh, Marcus, I love you. Let's go to space. So that's the weird, terrible story of Ms. Marvel having a baby.
But also imagine like Tony and Cap and Thor being like, okay, bye. Have a good time in space.
Also, here's the great one. So this is back when Thor still was Dr. Donald Blake, and he delivered the baby.
Oh my god.
And there's a scene in the comic where he's like, oh, Carol, are you pushing? And she's like, no, I'm not pushing. I'm not pushing at all. And he's like, well, how is the baby coming out?
Yikes.
It's just bizarre.
It's amazing that we start with that one, because in my minutes of research that I did for this, when I was looking for other examples, I found an article on screenrant.com, titled 15 Most WTF Moments in Superhero Comics. The number one on their list was the one that you just described. I'm reading the article as you're telling it, and it's like you're just nailing every point that they're pointing out.
Like the thing that's the most wild to me, and like what's weird is this is something that we see not quite to this terrible degree, but like the idea of a woman being like magically impregnated with either like a relative or her lover, like is something that happens to more than one female character in superhero comics.
According to this article, it even, because Marvel distanced, I mean, I'm deferring to you, Ellie, in how accurate this is, because I honestly don't know. It says here, Marvel immediately distanced themselves from the story, and Carol Danvers, once Marvel's flagship female superhero, didn't appear in comics for several years to avoid all mention of the incident. So like,
yeah, so definitely in the 80s, like obviously a year later, Chris Claremont brought her back. I think it was in the summer of 81. But between that story and 81, she was nowhere to be seen. That's a lot of comics. That's like up to 28 issues of some. And like, other than that, in the 80s, she sort of dropped out, and then they kind of brought her back in the 90s, and she really didn't come back to relevance until like the late 2000s, early 2010s when Bendis started writing with her on the Avengers again. Like there was definitely a large period of time where Marvel was like, well, we screwed the pooch on that one, so let's not use her anymore.
It's almost like grounding someone for being the victim.
Right, yeah.
You're being punished
so
now.
They let Chris Claremont use her in X-Men as binary, but like that's where again her history gets really weird and complicated because they didn't want anything to do with Ms. Marvel, quote, like as a concept, because they really just ducked it up.
No, it's her name's Warbird now. So we're not just gonna say the other name. We're just gonna ignore it. Look, it didn't happen.
I'm already so frustrated.
And when Ellie had brought this up during Nerd Nite, and we got our Q&A portion, I had asked, like, who was the writer on this? Like, who decided this would be a good idea? And even bringing up Jim Shooter as the editor, I was like,
yeah,
I thought Jim Shoots was a good guy, like, to greenlight this idea.
I mean, it's a lot of the case is it's people writing things that maybe they don't have the life experiences to write. So I think a lot of the stuff for me that is pretty egregious is written by white dudes, because comics majority for many decades were written by like white dudes. So they didn't have the perspective of like what a black man or a woman would have. So like, Iron Fist is a character I love, but he's absolutely just a terrible, terrible thing of like, well, I don't know how to write Asian men, so let's make a white guy good at Kung Fu.
Yeah.
God, you guys are already blowing my mind with shit that like I feel so what's the word I'm looking for? Like when people say, "Wake up, sheep."
Oh.
You're like the wool's over
Wake
my
up, sheeple.
Yeah.
Look in the mirror, it's you.
Like just Iron Fist, just a guy good at karate. Oh God, I'm so stupid.
Well, and it's so fascinating because it's like if you think about the Killing Joke and Barbara Gordon being shot and disabled, like the history behind that is real upsetting, and like the editor was like, no, go ahead, cripple the bitch. Like, what? People hopefully today don't talk like that.
Right.
There's still a lot of iffy stuff going on with the treatment of characters, but like just the level of sort of blatant disregard for everything that wasn't like a quote unquote big money maker, as if comics actually make that much money. It's really rampant, especially in like the 70s and 80s and a little bit in the 90s.
As you're describing this and you're saying, how many feminist writers there were who were recognizing these problems, and as you said, like, well, that was in the 80s. Alexandra DeWitt's first appearance was in 1994.
Who is Alexandra DeWitt?
It's Kyle's girlfriend.
Oh, okay. That's also on this list.
Yeah. Well, and also think about Elongated Man and how his wife
also on this list.
gets sexually harassed and then murdered.
And that was super recent comparatively.
And that was in 2004. Like, it is super frustrating. And then also, so a spin out of that one, which is great, is I believe Zatanna erases everybody's minds about what happened to Sue Dibney. And then like later on, Zatanna gets blamed for doing, I believe, what Batman told her to do. And it's just like, you can't have it both ways, dude.
Right. It's not Batman's fault. It's Zatanna's fault. Yeah, that's...
It should never be Batman's fault.
I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's also great because the popularity is not the term. The knowledge of the term women in refrigerators has been spreading to the point where I get surprised by it sometimes. Because I was at my fun job at local theme park, and we had brought up like Stranger Things because I had cracked the joke that was Bob, what's his name?
Bob, yeah, I know who you're talking about. Sean Astin.
Yeah. And I was like, was he only brought in just to be killed off to further someone else's goal and their inspiration to do the thing? And someone goes, are you saying he was fridged? And like the girl who said that, I was like, how do you know that? She's like, oh, it's in my college writing course. I'm like,
Yeah. Oh, it's like the Bechdel test. Like, they're becoming super pervasive in like the modern zeitgeist. Even though like Fridged was a Gil Simone joke back when she was like a comics blogger in the 90s, and the Bechdel test was just a comic about lesbians by Alison Bechdel and how they don't have conversations in movies, so like none of the female characters can be lesbians. And it's fascinating to see how they've kind of like mutated into cultural relevance.
Wait. The Bechdel test was started as a comic?
Yeah, so Alison Bechdel, who is the writer of Fun Home.
This wasn't like a scientific study of some kind?
No, yeah.
No.
This thing is
she
fascinating.
She originally had a series of like one-page comics about like lesbians in, I think, the 80s and 90s. And one of them was two lesbians walking home from a movie discussing how female characters never interact and how that means there can't be any like lesbian coded interpretations of them. And so one of the characters is like, well, I only watch movies that pass this test. And the test is the female characters have to talk to each other and they have to talk about something other than a male character. And that just eventually got called the Bechdel test. And then Kelly Sue DeConnick, who wrote Captain Marvel, kind of mutated it to the sexy lamp test, which is if a female character could be replaced with a lamp that looks sexy, your movie's not good.
That got
so
him.
there's
Wow.
your little history lesson on weird comics influencing culture.
I guess I'll admit, as a shitty male, I hadn't researched the term until I heard it in I think it was Every Frame a Painting, which is a guy who would do like, video essays on movies and stuff. And I think he did Serenity. And like he had mentioned in the first 10 minutes of Serenity, two named female characters interact without talking about and he's like, so it passes the test. And I was like, wait, what? And that's what made me like look into it and figure it out and be like, right, oh my God, this is an important thing.
Well, and what's so fascinating is like Alison Bechdel is on record being like, yeah, no, that wasn't my intention when I read the comic. And I think it's a really unnuanced way of looking at movies because like just because something passes those two like absolutely simple and easy tasks doesn't mean the movie is good.
True. Yeah.
And we say they're simple and easy, which in theory they should be, but it seems people struggle with them.
When I say
right.
that for sure.
Yeah. It seems people struggle with them mightily, to the point where, I mean, as we were talking about this, Bechdel test, I'm butchering the pronunciation, excuse me, but like it has its own lengthy Wikipedia article, based on a comic that like even she said, like that wasn't my intention, but like still I think it's important. And
if anyone didn't catch on, because we've sped through a lot of things. When I said Kyle's girlfriend,
right, yeah,
Kyle Rayner, the Green Lantern, who got his ring once Hal went crazy and destroyed his ring and destroyed all the Guardians and destroyed the Green Lantern power battery
because comics,
and there was just the one left. Alex was his girlfriend. Kyle gets the ring, starts being a superhero, and then one day he just comes home from superheroing and finds her folded in half in the fridge.
And I think it happens within the like first 6 pages of the first comic or something like that. It is a wildly short amount of time.
Green Lantern 54. He turned into Green Lantern in 51, I believe, or 50.
Okay, because her first appearance was number 48.
So she was around for 6 issues before she was put into a fridge.
Great.
Fantastic.
Strong female character.
Fantastic.
So well written.
I love the 90s.
And then time goes by, and at some point, President Lex puts Major Force on his military. Because that's fine.
Major Force was I can't remember if you said it, but
Major Force is who?
A man named Major Force.
He's a bad Captain Atom.
Great.
Like Sergeant Hatred.
Who's the guy in Marvel with the American flag on his face?
That's it. Oh, Nuke.
Which one?
I think that's Nuke.
Is that he hates Wolverine? They fight all the time.
Yeah. Also Cap. He has a thing with Cap sometimes too.
Right.
His name is just Nuke.
Of course it is.
Really likes America,
if
apparently.
we're talking bad names, I think D-Man's got to be
D-Man.
number one, the worst.
Who is D-Man?
Demolition Man.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was Demolition Man, and then he decided to change his name to D-Man because reasons.
Because comics.
And then he started wearing like a Wolverine-esque costume,
Yeah.
except I think it was like brown and red with a big D on it.
Sometimes it was either like a yellow and red or a yellow and brown. But if you crossed Daredevil's yellow costume with the Wolverine headpiece,
I think I've seen pictures of him.
then now you get, and like he's shorter and wider,
Like stocky.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen him I think I saw him in the I worked at a bookstore for 10 years. If I haven't pointed that out yet this episode, I point it out every week. And the Marvel Encyclopedia always comes in. That's just one of the most entertaining things to flip through. And I believe I remember seeing D-Man in the Marvel Encyclopedia.
Yep. Not a very big entry.
Oh, man. Comics. One that I found from this list, because I have a couple silly ones that are just, because comics, but one that was on this list of like the WTF moments on Screen Rant, which I didn't know about this one, features the Blob.
Okay.
And it looks like it's from the Ultimate Universe, which is already...
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the
Which
Ultimate...
is great, because, like, don't you love cannibalism and, like, incest?
She's already there.
Ultimates are for you.
Oh my God.
There's
like, I'm laughing, but it's also like sad laughing.
I don't think I ever really got into it on an episode of like the tragic ending of the Ultimate Universe, because the Ultimate Universe started off real good.
I've read, I remember reading The Ultimates and having no experience with the Ultimate Universe at all, besides you talking about it, Alex. And like, I read The Ultimates, I was like, that was dope. Cap he just dove out of a plane
without a parachute.
Yeah, like it was great. Why is Hulk so horny? I don't. But
he's a monster. And I liked most of the X-Men stuff. I mean, we saw the problem of like, the different creative team would just throw away plots when they came around, but then eventually like it just started getting bad, and whoever editor was in charge just would go, yeah, okay. And yep. So the Blob.
Then they like drowned the Ultimate Universe. But then like 2 months later, here's a new Ultimate Spider-Man. And then they reintroduced Ultimate X-Men, but the team was different, but it was implied they were still the same characters. And then it got pretty good for a while, and there was like Miles Morales and stuff. And then they just sort of smushed it into the 616 a little bit. Kind of.
Yeah, some characters crossed over. Not a lot, but a couple.
Apparently back... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, no, you're good. Go ahead.
Apparently back in 2009, so right about the time yours truly was getting into comics, buying The Walking Dead every month and dying to know what was going to happen with Rick. There was a storyline called Ultimatum, which was a 5-issue run, and to quote Screen Rant, literally ripped Marvel's 10-year-old Ultimates universe to shreds. Apparently there was a giant tsunami that devastates New York City. The Wasp dies in this tsunami, apparently, or she was dead and got washed up in the tsunami. You'll have to forgive my ignorance here.
You don't know. They don't really show you.
She's just dead.
Yep.
Great. Even better. And apparently the Blob stumbles upon her, and because this is the Ultimates universe, you think you know the Blob. He's a fat guy.
Yeah.
But apparently the Blob in this universe is also a cannibal, or just eats everything.
Surprise, because that had never been approached as a topic at any point before this moment.
Great. So he just decides to, he stumbles upon Wasp's body and just starts to eat her.
And like one of the heroes just finds them there, ankle deep in ocean in the middle of the city. And like it's a gross scene where like Blob is just holding the Wasp's body. And like taking a chunk out of her ribs or whatever.
It's a nasty panel. They have a shot of it.
Yeah. And it's kind of, you get there and you go, what? That's all we're getting for Jan? That's it?
Did I really want to pay $3.99 for this?
And yeah, Ultimatum was not a good run because it took a lot of good things that, as you said, had 10 years of history. We had 70 issues of X-Men, over 100 issues of Spider-Man.
But hey, then Giant Man shows up. And wasn't Giant Man a piece of shit to
well, that's in like the regular. I don't know about Ultimates.
Oh, it happened early on in Ultimates too. It was different, but it happened. Yeah,
awesome.
Giant Man shows up and he spoilers, and he bites the Blob's head off. So I guess.
Doesn't he just pick him
No,
up
but
too?
don't you understand? It's revenge.
Yep. He just picked him up and okay, cool. Didn't in the Ultimates didn't I could be recalling this wrong. It's been a while since I read it. Didn't Giant Man like sick his ants on the Wasp like and kill her or something like almost.
Well, they got in an argument and like she stung him and he sent his ants after her because she shrunk down and was hiding.
Right.
And then at one point, either of them was like trying to use like insecticide on the other one.
Christ.
And Jan like left and Cap found out that Hank abused her. And then Cap white knighted himself and went and beat the crap out of Hank Pym. Just kicked the like, you know, made Ultimate Cap seem pretty cool, but like, it's no thanks for getting there that way.
Right.
Yeah, Ultimate, I don't want to talk about the Ultimates right now.
That's fair. Yeah.
We have Ellie on. Let's talk with Ellie some more. I don't want to get into that.
Yep. That'll be another 6 episodes.
Possibly. What else do you have? What do you want to?
Yeah, well, I mentioned weird pregnancies, so I might as well dive into the other really big one.
Yeah, let's go.
Over on the DC side of things, one of my favorite characters from DC is Power Girl. And during the 90s, in her appearance in Justice League Europe, she suddenly becomes pregnant. And she's like, well, I don't know how this happened. Eventually what it comes to be is she's like, she and Hal Jordan, like 5 or 10 issues ago, had a scene where they kissed, and then it was maybe implied they maybe did more. But like Hal Jordan comes up to her and he's like, it's not my baby. We didn't sleep together. And then she like punches him because she's Power Girl. And because he implies basically she had sex with Aquaman, and so it must be his baby. Wild stuff. So this is the time that Power Girl is Atlantean for like 5 years. Yeah, so she was Atlantean for a while, like Aquaman Atlantean.
Okay.
Obviously.
Right.
So her grandfather was a magician, according to this like storyline. Her Atlantean grandfather was a magician named Aaron or Arian.
Okay.
It's weird. It's Arion. This stuff is awful. And so like she finds out she's Atlantean. She finds out she's pregnant. The other heroes start to like kind of pick on her, and they're like, well, who's the daddy? What did you do? How could you do this? And she starts like fainting, and her powers are getting inconsistent. And then the baby starts being able to like telekinetically move her. And so eventually we get to 0 hour. Power Girl is like 8 months pregnant. She's sidelined during the event and gives birth to the baby, and has Wonder Woman as the midwife. So the baby is born. It seems to have superpowers, including growing really fast. Hey, that sounds familiar. Power Girl just calls the baby baby. For no explained, like, there's no reason why she shouldn't name it, but she doesn't for some reason.
What mom would want to name their child? I mean, come on.
Yeah, crazy. She goes to Atlantis to raise the baby, and it keeps growing faster and faster. And eventually it's revealed that her grandfather, Aaron, impregnated her with a demon seed in order to give birth to the perfect being.
Great.
Just comics. And then the best part is the baby grows into a full-grown man like an issue later, takes the name Equinox, defeats his father, tells his mom to go get her own life, and then just disappears. And we've never seen or heard from Equinox again, like in all the history of DC Comics and all of their retcons. He's just nowhere. And Power Girl, of course, never mentions the event at all in any way. Not even like, boy, I'm sad baby left.
I have a few issues of Arion just because I'll buy up long boxes of random junk.
You would let
yeah,
me
absolutely. That's the perfect era of like dollar comics.
Yeah.
You would let me 0 hour last year, I believe. And I read
forgot to tell which way to read it.
That's the thing. It wasn't because you just assume comics are read serially.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's a number on them. And I was like, oh, this is 0 hour. I guess I'll start with issue 0. Turns out that's the last issue. So I read, I'm
Yeah,
like,
you had to
Surprise.
start with 4.
yep. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, I have no idea what's going on. It'll probably make sense in the next couple issues. And I finished reading that, and I was like, wow, that felt like a conclusion. And I'm talking to Alex about it. I was like, well, now I don't want to read. Like, what's the point of reading the others? I still have those, by the way. I can get those back to you.
That was another of their attempts to combine all the universes that they had.
Yep.
All their multiple Earths. And that was where we got Parallax, right? I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That was our first Parallax. So, wow, it's let's make a prediction of like, when is Jeff Johns gonna be like, surprise, it's Equinox. he's the major bad guy now.
So the reveal of whatever the Watchmen tie-in that they have going on right now, it's going to be that Equinox was behind it all, not the Watchmen, Equinox. You know, that one guy from the 90s.
Whoever's listening, if anyone at DC is listening, I mean, they're only 4 months behind on DC Doomsday Clock right now. So,
well, they switched it to every other month.
Oh.
So, because it was originally going to be a monthly title, or was it? I think it was going to be monthly, and then they're like, "Just kidding, it's going to be every other month."
Number 11 is now missed 2 releases. Then
Sounds about right for an event.
I actually stopped reading it because I love Gary Frank's art.
Mhm.
He's one of my favorite artists. I've obviously been a longtime fan of Jeff Johns, and they're great on the Batman Earth One series together. So I was like, this is, and I've read Watchmen. I like Watchmen. I'm gonna read Doomsday Clock, and I read the first cut, and like it gets to the point where they come out so far from each other, I don't remember what's happening.
Yeah.
And because they're so, and Johns is doing it like in the Alan Moore style, where it's like a ton of panels, a lot of dialogue,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I guess the point, I'm just buying the issues, waiting for it to be done, so then I can read all the issues in a row. I'm essentially buying a really long trade.
Yeah, it's the 12-month trade.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's how long a trade would normally take to come out if the comic was already released. But yeah, so I have all the issues of Doomsday Clock, but I haven't read since issue 3 or 4, maybe. But yeah.
As you started naming like, Power Girl's family, I don't want to be like, well, like on Krypton?
Yeah.
On Earth 2
Yeah,
Krypton?
No, it was eventually they retconned it. For a really long time in the 90s, they had this thing where like Power Girl, her powers were inconsistent when she was in JLI and then JLE and then probably another JL. Like they had this thing where like sometimes she had X-ray vision and sometimes she didn't.
Because comics.
Well,
Yeah.
I feel like that kind of fits because for a while Superman was doing all kinds of crazy stuff too.
Yeah.
Like they
well,
didn't...
I think this was even like around the time of the death and return of Superman,
Right.
which just adds even more weirdness.
I just looked. I seriously thought this
What?
episode's been going on for about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
We're already at almost 45.
Okay.
Just for what it's
Okay.
worth. Alex, you haven't hit us with a Cuz Comics yet?
I am a big fan of Kraven.
Yes.
Kraven the Hunter.
Love that vest.
How can you not?
It really is a great design. Like he has the goofiest costume, but it works.
It does. Yeah, and they've been able to like update it but not really change very much.
I was
but
just going to
still-
say largely unchanged.
Yeah. But like it's still kind of legit somehow and we go with it. I want to say he's one of my favorite Spider-Man villains, but like I also like Green Goblin. I like Superior Spider-Man,
Yep.
so I guess I like Doc Ock. But there's a lot of
I like Alfred Molina Doc Ock.
and but there's a lot of history to Kraven, and then Kraven like deciding he finally beat Spider-Man, and that's when he commits suicide. But then later on you learn, oh, he had a wife and a kid and a brother and a cousin. So there's uncles now, and so main Kraven was Sergei Kravenov, and then I forgot his brother's name. So then Spider-Man had to fight Kraven's brother Kraven, and then
Raven.
Calypso was Kraven's wife, and she brought Lizard along with her and made Spider-Man see visions of undead Kraven with a hole in his head where the shotgun blast was. And then they revealed Kraven's son was going after Spider-Man too. And so this was all like real crazy 90s stuff. McFarlane did some stuff with Calypso. Time goes by. Kraven Jr. is like, I don't want to be a bad guy. Maybe I'll be a good guy. Maybe I'll do something else. So he got a mini series called Get Kraven in the night sometime in the...
That's such a bad title, but it's amazing.
This was in 2003. So it was definitely after Get Shorty came out.
Right.
And every cover, like almost every cover, is a movie poster. So like the one, it looks like a Jaws cover. One looks like Scarface. One looks like
Home Alone.
Home Alone, and another one is Cape Fear.
That's pretty cool.
Mike Diodato did the covers, so he's amazing. But then the interiors are not so good.
Not the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate when that happens. It's such a buzzkill.
Yeah.
Let's see, John McCree. I'm gonna just call him out. And also, while we're here, Ron Zimmerman was the writer. And this was kind of gross and weird. The art's not that good. Issue 1, it's number 1 of 7. So we've got Alyosha is the guy's name. They call him Al for short. He's going to go to Hollywood. Spider-Man's there for some reason. His girlfriend's there. She's drawn to be really hot. And he's got a pet giant wolf. The girlfriend's name is Timber. The wolf's name is Nichols.
Wait, it's the girlfriend's name is Timber, not the wolf?
Correct.
That's wild. Who knew?
Mm-hmm. So we go through. Kraven beats up some people. He becomes friends with the Vulture. Movie people want him in the movies because he's fantastic. His father shows up. Kraven appears, does Kraven stuff. They figure out, oh, it's just the Chameleon pretending to be Kraven because they were really tight and Chameleon's gone insane. And there's more producer stuff. The girlfriend gets beat up real bad. And then they go out and they seek vengeance. And so Kraven gets the bad guys back. At one point, like...
Is there a reason they beat her up, or is it just so Kraven can get pissed?
It's,
Just a shitty plot
I
device?
couldn't really get through it. There was a lot of text. The art was bad. You couldn't really... And, like, there wasn't a good reason, but, like, they really did a job on her. And it was really unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
And it... Main Kraven learns he has another brother, fathered by his actual dad. And like at one point, Chameleon Kraven like goes to attack Alyosha with a spear and like misses and hits the brother, so he just dies.
Okay.
Spider-Man shows up. He's like, "Hey, you got this?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, it's cool here." And like a dude's dying, bleeding, speared to the wall, and Peter Parker Spider-Man's like, "All right, cool. This is all cool with me."
Deuce.
See you later, bye.
Right, yeah. It's like, really? And it got real bizarre. So then we get to issue 6. I'm going to skip ahead. We're wrapping it up.
Yep.
And we're getting to the thing. The girl's there. She's out of the hospital. It's fine. They're in a convertible. The wolf is there. Can you just read that for me right there?
Am I reading this out loud?
Yeah.
So they're all hanging together in a car, and the wolf says, "I thought this story was supposed to be 7 issues. And isn't it weird that I waited till the last page to talk? Good night."
Are you for real?
And this is issue 6.
Yep. That was the end of the series.
Like, do you think they just were like, wait, we can't stretch this out for another issue? just let's make it a joke. it was 6 issues.
Like, did the editor finally go, "Guys, this is garbage. We got to wrap this up. Can we not?" And that's our result. That's what we got.
That's the resolution.
Baffling. What?
Mm-hmm. The wolf doesn't talk for the entire time. It gets in a couple of fights throughout the series, or like protects girl, or gets beat up when she gets beat up. And then at the very end, it's like, oh, by the way, the wolf talks. Nichols can speak, and references the issue like a Deadpool comic.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Real riveting.
So
Quality.
I kind of like don't want to look up either of these two guys to see if they got more work ever.
But you're gonna find out one of them is like an editor now.
Or they won like 6 Eisners for that story.
Oh, there's no way. There is no way. But it's like that's how they're gonna cut it. Like there's a lot of issues of writers or artists in the past that like have been mad at each other or mad at the business, and so they'll sneak stuff into the comic or into the issue.
That's not even sneaking it in though. That's
Oh no, it's real. It's
like it's one thing. So there was an issue I think of Spider-Gwen where she's like running down a street and then she sees Kitty Pryde and she's like, "Oh no, Kitty Pryde is here. That means I'm in a Bendis comic," which I love because I'm a Kitty Pryde fan. So. But like that I accept as like that's a little dig, but like a lighthearted one.
mm-hmm.
The Nickel the Wolf, I'm just confused by.
Yeah. Yep. And the wolf's never come back. Currently, there's a real big Kraven arc going on.
Yep. Big Kraven arc in Amazing Spider-Man.
And Kraven has also had a daughter, but
Anna, right?
Huh?
Anna?
I believe so. And she was appearing in a lot of Inhumans books because her mother was apparently Inhuman but didn't know it. And
so Kraven's an Inhuman.
No, Kraven's not.
Is Kraven a mutant or anything like that, or is just a real good hunter?
Just a real good Russian hunter.
He might have got like a serum at some point. He's not super soldier.
Right.
And I believe at some points Nick Fury has had like an eternity serum of some kind, so that's why he's still alive.
He can hang.
Yeah,
he can hang though.
He can live along.
That's right, because they did like the Vietnam War stuff with Wolverine and Kraven and Punisher or something like that, right?
Was Kraven there? I don't recall that one.
I don't know. I feel like he was, but that could just be the Mandela effect of like, it seems right.
Yeah, Fury definitely did Vietnam stuff.
Yeah.
But like, I feel he got some, I forgot the name of it, but he has some kind of like legacy serum where he like doesn't age or whatever, or like ages slower. So like, I think Kraven has like some kind of, supernatural juice that makes him kind of strong.
I just gagged at supernatural juice.
What's like Black Panther's flowers, but like not like that. It's not as potent or whatever. But
some good juice.
Yeah. And whatever's happening in Spider-Man's Hunted series now with Kraven's other son, I imagine.
There's been I don't want to spoil it because it's real recent.
Well, like the dude with the shoulders that look like a cheetah,
yeah,
the tattoo thing, he was showing up in Punisher comics a while ago, like years ago. So I don't think it's the same as like movie star Kraven with his talking wolf, apparently.
Oh my god!
By the way, don't buy this series.
Yeah,
if you because I got like as a collection, some comic shops will like collect the entire run and you could buy the whole thing. I overpaid by about $14.
Yeah.
Did you pay $14?
No, I paid $15.
Oh, okay.
If I ever like bring this up to Mike Diodato at a convention, be like, can you just sign the cover?
Right.
He'll just tear them up.
I just really like the covers. My other just kind of silly examples, I'm going to fly through these because they're super quick and we're running low on time, and I feel like what you guys have to say is way better than what I have to say. One of my Because Comics moments, and this is a little pretty, I don't know if anyone reads Invincible here. Mm-hmm. Invincible spoilers. We're going on some Robert Kirkman Invincible spoilers for the very end of the series. Mm-hmm. So if you haven't finished Invincible, maybe just skip ahead like 2 minutes. And I guess this could also go with the tone of the comic itself, but the ending battle between Invincible and Thrag.
Okay.
Do you remember that? In the sun?
Yeah.
In the sun?
What?
Because we have to... Are you kidding me? So we have these two, and like, when they punch each other, like, oh, I punched you real hard and I broke your arm. Like, damn, like, that's how strong I am and how fragile. Oh, but now we're fighting in the sun. So that was one of my Because Comics moments. Yeah. Was, moments ago, like, oh, you're strangling me. You're strangling me. I can't breathe. I need oxygen, but I can survive in the sun. Like, they're literally like diving in and out of the
pushing
molten...
each other into it.
Yeah. It's absurd. Because Comics. Another Because Comics was when the New 52 started.
Is that it? Just the New 52?
One could argue. One could argue. Joker cutting off his face for whatever reason. And then they don't mention it for a while. If I recall this correctly, it's just Detective Comics 1 for New 52, Joker cuts his face off. And then he just okay. And then he shows up later on in Batman with Snyder and Capullo with Death of the Family. There might be stuff in between there that I'm missing.
Oh,
but
you mean when Joker's daughter
had that like iconography everywhere? And then there was the Joker's daughter thing.
She finds his face in a sewer and puts it on.
Vile. Vile.
Also, her first appearance issue was done by like 7 different artists.
Oh yeah, that was with the holographic covers. Remember that?
Yeah.
Oh my god, the lenticulars. Oh. So I worked in a comic shop when those came out, and that was just the biggest nightmare in the world.
Oh my god, they were I remember talking about them on this very podcast.
We held them up to the mic and did the
Yep.
But no one knew how to draw her cane with the crescent moon on it. So every artist just drew it differently because there was no reference for it.
Yep.
That was great.
It's great character. And then I actually didn't have this on my list, but then I brought it up. I just put all of Final Crisis and the Return of Batman, Batman. Remember the Return of Bruce Wayne?
No, I don't want to talk about Final Crisis.
Is that the one where he was a pirate for a while?
Yeah.
And then the
traveled
return,
through
time.
Right.
Yep. The Return of Bruce Wayne was my first, because I got into comics right when Final Crisis ended. So like I started buying comics on a weekly basis like 2 months after Batman got killed. Yeah. Spoilers for Final Crisis.
And how did he get killed? How did he die?
It was the Omega. No.
Oh, I thought his helicopter exploded.
LMD.
Which one was it?
I didn't.
Was it the Omega Beam or was it the helicopter?
I've never read Final Crisis.
He died. That's the important part.
Superman was holding his body. It was Superman, right? Or was it Martian Manhunter? It was Superman. And so then when, like a year later, I don't even remember, Blackest Night happened. Holy shit. Bruce Wayne shows up as a zombie at one point. It blows your fucking mind.
Black Hand is carrying Batman's skull the entire time.
He's carrying his skull the whole time. Badass shit. And then, oh my God, they're bringing Bruce Wayne back. Holy God, this is going to be great. I'm foaming at the mouth because I'm like, I'm going to get this #1. It's going to be worth a fortune. I can't wait for Batman to come back. I can read Batman comics. And I didn't know who Grant Morrison was, so I'm just buying it. I'm just buying it. Yep. I'd never read Grant Morrison. I'd never had... Actually, that's a lie, because I was reading Batman and Robin at the time, I believe.
Okay.
Which is Grant Morrison.
Yep.
But I didn't know what I was in for. And I remember, like, halfway through one of the second or third issue, I was like, what the fuck is happening? I still have them, and I've read all of them, but the Omega Beam sent him spiraling through time, and he had to live as different iterations of Bruce Wayne throughout time. Like, it's Pilgrim Bruce Wayne, and it's Caveman Bruce Wayne. And
my favorite part was when he got to watch Bucky die again while he was fighting the Red Skull.
Oh,
because Captain America Reborn was happening at the same time.
The exact same thing. So yeah, those are my real quick just because comics things, not quite as heavy or problematic as the other examples, but again, you are both much more read, diverse, and smarter than I am.
I mean, one of my favorite fun ones was Dan Slott's run on She-Hulk, because She-Hulk was one of the first characters in the Marvel Universe to break the fourth wall in the 80s, and Dan Slott kind of threw it back to the John Byrne era, and he had her as a lawyer, but at her law firm, they used Marvel Comics as part of their evidence. So they had all these issues that either referenced stuff that happened in other comics, or they just straight up held up the cover of a comic from 10 years ago and we're like, and in this one you did this. And it's something that you could only accomplish in comic books. It was so good.
I dig that. That's evidence. This is evidence A or B. Yeah. Was that the Greg Land covers? I think. Yes,
I believe so. But they were so I'm not a big fan of Land because he does just the really bad Tracy O face.
Yeah.
But these covers were not so bad. they definitely had the sort of like painterly aspect to them.
Dude,
like the bodies were a little wonky, but
I might confuse Greg Land with Greg Horn sometimes.
I think it's Greg Horn. I think you're right.
I dig that guy.
Yeah.
He's better.
Yeah, they're pretty good. But definitely, if you haven't read the Dan Slott She-Hulk, I super highly recommend it. It is so much fun.
Mhm.
Also, the John Byrne one, that's where She-Hulk jump ropes, quote, naked. And then the gag is paused by the editor of the comic, and She-Hulk puts down her jump rope, and she's wearing a white bikini, and the editor is like, "You can't trick comic fans. They know."
The Dan Slott She-Hulk, when was that? Because I got introduced to Dan Slott when he was doing Spider-Man. Was that?
I think it was a little bit before. I think it was 2004, 2005 that it was coming out.
Gotcha.
Was that the one where she wanted to put away Star Fox?
Yes.
Like Star Fox, like the video game?
No.
Okay.
Yes,
Star Fox is...
the
Slippy
real
was just a
dude
terrible
with,
guy.
like, pheromone or hormone or whatever, like sex powers, basically.
Yeah.
Nice, okay.
Star Fox just... he's Thanos' brother, first of all. So he's a Titan.
Gotcha.
And he's a cosmic person, and his power is just to seduce women against their will.
Great.
But like, he gets to train. No, I'm just convincing you to do what you want to do. There's a lot of bullshit, and like he was a terrible character, and so She-Hulk's run like called him out on that basically. Which in pre-show, Jayare was trying to bring up a character, couldn't think of his name. It's like it was a monkey dude from like Spider-Man stuff, and I was like, the Mandrake? God, I hope it wasn't Mandrake. Because, no, Mandrill, I think. One of those. Can't get in there. I should look it up.
But it wasn't Hit Monkey?
Hit Monkey just kills people. It was either Mandrake or Mandrill. Kind of looks like a baboon.
Mandrake the Magician?
Was it a monkey person?
Doesn't look like a monkey person on the internet. Mandrill.
Yeah.
I'm Googling.
Yeah.
It's Mandrill. He's a monkey man.
He also like controls women to do his bidding, and like mind wipes them or some garbage like that.
He's like a baboon man.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Real creepy, like disgusting.
Yeah, like the third picture on Google Images of him like creeping over Spider Woman's shoulder. Like I can't even read the word bubbles, but I already know they're terrible. Yeah, it was not the Mandrill. It was Gibbon.
Yeah.
There was a recent issue of Spider-Man. If you haven't read it, that the current arc of Spider-Man is pretty great. I haven't been reading a whole lot of Spider-Man historically, but I picked up the new one because Ryan Otley is on the art, and I love me some Ryan Otley. And they did like they're doing side stories. So one week you'll get the main story with the Kraven and the Hunted and all that stuff, and then the next week you'll get like a side story of following around this character. And one of them was on Gibbon, which I'd never heard of. He's like an ape man, and the issue almost made me cry. It was heavy. It was a real heavy issue. And I had to Google it to make sure I wasn't alone in this. And everyone was like, "What the fuck happened with that issue of Spider-Man?" But anyways, I'm on a rant now because comics.
I'm pretty sure those She-Hulks can be found like in trade paperback.
They should
ones.
still be published. Another good one that's quick is Howard the Duck, the most recent run by Joe Quinones on art and Chip Zdarsky on writing. They not only inserted Joe Quinones' cat, Biggs, as a mecha cat, but they also inserted themselves as aliens. And there's, again, this whole like metatextual, like they're aliens writing a script for a comic about Howard the Duck that's controlling Howard's life because of that one X-Men villain, whose name escapes me, but the one who has the TV channel, Mojo.
Hate Mojo.
Yeah, it's wild, but it's very good, and you can also find that one out in trade pretty easily.
I think I picked up the first issue of that because I like Chip a lot with his work on sex criminals, and Joe Quinones, like we've been huge.
His art is good.
It's amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was the first person. I've told this story so many fucking times. Just bear with me. He was the first person I've ever hunted down at a convention to get like a signature in a sketch. When I first started like recognizing like, I like this art. Who does this art so I can see them later? And like, it was Boston Comic Con the first year we went in 2010, I believe.
I don't remember.
When it was in the basement of the Westin.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember seeing Joe Quinones was going to be there.
Were you there?
I think that was actually my first Boston Comic Con back in 2010.
That's what's up. And because Wednesday Comics had just wrapped up, and I remember my favorite story in Wednesday Comics was the Green Lantern story. I remember I loved the art. Who is this guy? And we're hunting him down, and then it was one of the first times I ever was like, "Can you sign this? I really liked it." And I have since got like we've thrown so much praise and money at Joe Quinones over the past couple of years. He's great. He's a great guy, great artist, and he's local too. He's out of Boston.
That's super cool.
But yes, very very cool guy. Ellie, did you have any other examples that you wanted to get to before we wrap up? Or I mean, obviously, we want to give you time to kind of pitch. Like your business card. It looks like you are a woman of many talents. So I imagine there are places where people can go to see or hear your work. I don't know if you're ever planning on doing another Nerd Night or anything like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll be doing another Nerd Night. I just have to put together something. I'm kind of all over the place right now. I'm working on moving some of my writing from blogs that are now defunct to my own website. So you can find me on elliehillis.com, ELLIEHILLIS.com. You can also find me over on Twitter. I have a link on my website. That's where I'm most verbally active right now, although it's just a lot of trash.
That's
as
Twitter.
All Twitters are.
Because Twitter.
Exactly. But yeah, no, I've been into comics since I was a kid. I've been actively collecting comics since probably 2009. I worked in a comic store for a really long time, and from there I kind of went on to write my college thesis on comics. I present at conventions. I actually presented 2 panels at Anime Boston the other weekend. I also do cosplay. I make my own costumes for the most part. I fancy myself a comics historian, so I kind of dabble in all the history of that sort of thing. And I'll probably be at another Nerd Night in a couple of months when I've had time to think about another topic. So yeah, you can find me all over the place online. I fancy myself a nerd of many things. So, that's kind of my jazz. My thing is just, I like to talk about women in pop culture.
One of the things I did that's on your website in your about section is you posted a bunch of where to find your letters. Because not every comic book does it. It used to be a big thing back in the day. Some kind of got out of it. Some still do it because it's fun. But like there were letters columns in the back of the comics issues. And like you have, let's see, I think it's at least 6 of them posted. Like what? Yeah. A couple for Paper Girls, a couple for Hellcat, Gem and the Holograms, and X-Men Gold. And what made you decide to write into comics like that?
So first of all, I love collecting older comics, and the thing I like about collecting older floppies is like the Stan soapbox and the letters. And I get really excited when I see letters in like old issues of the original Excalibur run that are like, "Oh, I really liked what you did with this character, and I didn't like what you did with this," because I like to see kind of where my opinions align with people who get published. But for me, a lot of it sort of depends. So with Hellcat, I love Patsy Walker. I'm a really big fan of Damon Hellstrom. Weirdest like minor character. Everybody's got one of those that they're like, this is my weird hill I'm gonna die on. So now that he's got a TV show coming out, I'm excited, I guess. But so for Hellcat, I was a really big fan of the characters. I was a big fan of Kate Leth, and I had actually talked with her at a couple Anime Bostons, and so I really wanted to show support. I also made a costume for the character, so I wanted to show that off. With Paper Girls, again, same thing. I know the artist in passing, Cliff Chang. So I wanted to support Cliff, and also I happened to they had like a card society, so you could join the paper network, the newspaper delivery network. So I joined that, and I happened to draw like a goofy picture referencing one of the characters, and that got published in Paper Girls #5. So I just kept writing. Jim and the Holograms, I wrote about body positivity and how it was really important to see that, and also characters with anxiety. And I did a Jim cosplay, so I wanted to share that. And then with X-Men Gold, that's a big one for me. So I'm a huge, huge Kitty Pryde fan. But as an adult, I have a very complex relationship with the pairing of her and Colossus, because there's like the history of them and the imbalanced power dynamics, and like he had tendencies to be abusive as recently as like Wolverine and the X-Men. When he had the Phoenix Force, he was like trying to bully Kitty into dating him. So I was like, why are you doing this? This is a really bad choice. Like, you're not referencing the negative history that the characters have. You're just trying to be like Chris Claremont, essentially. And they published my letter, but the writer like blew me off and was like, well, that's just your experience. But like, what I really like about that one is that someone emailed me. Someone found me through my website, emailed me, and was like, I really appreciate the letter because I've had a similar life experience to you with like an abusive relationship with an older man. And I really appreciate that you pointed out the things that I wasn't even like consciously aware bothered me about Colossus and Kitty Pryde as an adult relationship. So that was kind of those are some of my highlights. And I just think it's fun. I think it's fun to show people that you're really into the comic or not into the comic. I think it's cool when comics print letters, and I like that there's kind of been a new trend, at least with Marvel and Image, to continue to print letters, because I think it really lets people feel connected to the media without having to like be connected to the creators through social media, because that can always be disheartening when you like find a creator you really like and follow them on Twitter and then they say something real shitty.
Heard that.
This is that's really wild. I dig it. Correct. if you were to like find, you know, the writer, the artist on social media, and then if you post, or, you know, if you wrote the same thing on that, you might just get bombarded with shitty trolls.
Yeah.
Because it's real easy because it's the internet. But like at the same time, it's too much work for them to find your letter in the book and then reply to you through that. They're just gonna move on.
Well, and in like the case of X-Men Gold, I had dropped it the month before the letter one got published. So someone was like, oh, I'm glad they finally published a negative letter. I really hate X-Men Gold. And I was like, oh, I sent them a negative letter a while back. And then I looked and I was like, oh shit, that's my letter. But it's something that I think is weird and old fashioned, but there's totally a charm to it. And it's one of those things that like my friend has one of the Marvel comics that Evan Dorkin wrote into when he was younger and not a creator, and he had like drawn a picture for them and sent it to them and they published it. So my friend Barack took that comic to Evan Dorkin and had him sign it, and I just like the fantasy of like maybe one day I'll be there and I'll be a writer and like someone brings Paper Girls #5 and is like, can you sign this because your letter's in it.
That'd be cool.
Yeah,
it's rad because
it's a very charming thing.
A lot of books, like you mentioned, Paper Girls. Which, how good is Paper Girls, by the way?
Oh my god, so
good. They're one of those books, and I guess it's Brian K. Vaughan specifically, or Brian K. Vaughan and his editors, whoever makes the decisions there. They have fun with their letter columns. In like Saga and whenever Saga comes back, and in Paper Girls, because like they'll do like, hey, fill out this thing, and
the Saga surveys,
and if we pick you, we'll send you some merch, or you know, like it's and in Paper Girls you could fill out a card. I meant to do it, but I kept forgetting because I also didn't want to destroy my book, because you could fill out like a thing, and like in the back you cut this out, fill it out, and you could send it. You'll get your what is the ANDG?
I cheated and I photocopied it because I didn't want to hurt the comic.
Did you end up getting anything? Was it like a membership card?
Yeah, I have a little laminated membership card that is almost too big for my wallet. And I can use it in theory at conventions. Sometimes they have like little special events, or like you can pick up swag at Cliff's booth. I've never gotten anything from it, but I just sort of appreciate having it.
That's rad.
And it's like back in the day, you used to have those and this is before my time even, the like mail-in things to be like part of the Archie fan club or part of the like Mighty Marvel fan club. And so it's basically in the vein of that, like just kind of the 1980s fan club cards.
There was a Foom, not to be confused with Fin Fang Foom, but it was Friends of Old Marvel.
Ol?
Yes.
As in old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, there was a Foom club. Even then, like that was fans of like the 60s stuff in the 80s.
Right.
Right.
We got to people need to bring that stuff back. That's vintage stuff.
Out of our friend group and everyone I know personally, there's only one other person who has written in and gotten it published.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Our friend, our frequent guest, Colin.
Actually, I am also published.
Did I know this?
You might. I mean, technically, I'm published. Technically, a picture of my cat is in the letter column of the second to last issue of Chew. Because if you took,
that's the trick. You just gotta send cute cat pictures, and then they'll be all in.
Exactly. John Layman historically loves cats, and he would. I don't know when it started, but he would people would take pictures of their cats, like, oh, here's my cat laying on a comic, laying on Chew, or here's my cat in a Chog figure. And it got to the point where, like, okay, this is a new section. Here's the cat pictures. Mm-hmm. And, like, I remember him, like, I had sent one in of my cat, like, a year beforehand. Mm-hmm. And, like, when the series was coming to a close, he's like, hey, there's not going to be any cat pictures at the end of the last issue. It's just going to be the comic. So if you want your pictures in, get them in now. Mm-hmm. And I remember, like, just flipping through and, like, this is, like, 6 issues of disappointment. Like, my cat's not in the book. And finally, my main man, Dwight the cat, showed up in the second to last issue. But anyways, I stole the limelight. Continue, Alex, as we continue going.
Yeah, our frequent friend and guest and board member Colin is in an issue of Invincible.
Yep.
And then he got Ryan Otley to sign his issue that he's in. And then I had both Ryan and Colin sign one of my issues.
Yep. I took a picture of it happening. It was pretty great.
I took a video.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
It's neat. It's one of those things. Letter columns are underrated. You can find some good gems in there. It's nice when they respond, and like comics, good old comics. We are very over. Thank you, Ellie, for dealing with us and giving us an extra couple minutes of your time tonight.
Of course. Yeah.
This was.
I forgot one other thing. I want to plug real quick.
Plug it.
I also design role playing games with Density Media, and you can find our stuff at zine.games. I totally forgot. That's another thing I do.
Oh, I have like 20 new questions now. Okay.
Oh, we'll have to talk to her another time.
I see what you did there. But thank you so much. I'm now twice as mad at myself for sleeping through Nerd Nite like an idiot. But hopefully there'll be another one very soon that I can check out. Go and look at all of Ellie's stuff. Check her out if that's something that you're interested in. Maybe peruse your letters column. You'll never know who might pop up.
At the time this episode is published, it might be Free Comic Book Day.
What?
Or the next day might be Free Comic Book Day.
It'll be the day before Free Comic Book Day. Actually, no. It'll be the morning of Free Comic Book Day.
Nice.
Because I'm gonna publish this one, and then I'm gonna drive down to New York to go watch the Yankees probably lose. But yeah, your boy's missing out on Free Comic Book Day, which I that literally connected with me about 30 seconds before we met up today.
If you want to hear more about free comics, look up our past episodes. If you go to our search bar on omvpodcast.com and just type in Free Comic Day, there's at least 3 other episodes where we talk about going to
as early as last year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can hear us talk.
Check that out. Some stores like Canned Goods. Some stores have their free stuff. Some stores have really good deals and sales. Or
raffles.
They have artists come to draw things. It's a lot of big deals and a lot of fun.
Support your local comic shop.
Yeah,
And,
it's a huge day for comic shops. So if you are going to go and you can afford to spend money, that's a great way to support them. But if you can't, free comics are still there, and that's awesome.
It's true. Do it. Go get some comics and read them and love them and appreciate them. Ellie, thanks again. This was so much fun. And we're gonna have to talk again at some point soon, because this was great. Your knowledge of comics is fascinating, and it's enlightening. A lot of fun. Thanks again. I've said thanks 4 times now. That means it is officially time to end. So until next time, I have been JR.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Ellie.
And this has been episode 372 of Opinions May Vary.